All right, so y'all have read those sections in there, and you talked a little bit about it with yourselves, and I'm going to kind of summarize some things and maybe ask you some questions, okay? So I guess the first kind of question I ask is, in very, very general sense, what was it like when the British did their colonization on the people that lived in those areas? And if you have a specific example, you can use it. How did they treat them? Things like that.
Did they treat them bad?
Yeah, I mean, that's the easy thing to say is they treated them bad because they went in and kind of took over. So the British did this in a lot of places, and it was all for colonization, it was all for the raw materials, and then eventually it was imperialism. Now, next chapter we'll talk about Alec, next chapter we'll talk about imperialism, which is like colonization on steroids, okay? And so it'll be bad, okay? It'll be even bad. But what are some of the things that made it bad?
They brought over diseases.
Well, that's the easy example. We talk about North America. Of course, Europeans brought diseases. There was someplace else in that section that talked about diseases. Where was it? Australia, okay. All right, so, and the people that were living in Australia before the British got there were called what? Aborigines, right? So one of the themes that you'll notice when the British go into some place, they have an effect on the Aborigines. This may seem real simple, but it's true. In North America, we know Europeans brought diseases. They brought diseases in Australia. But a lot of places the British had a pretty big impact, right? Now, do you think the British thought they were doing that on purpose? Do you think the British thought they were being mean on purpose? Like, hey, let's go in, let's kill all these people. No, not really. In fact, we'll talk about it more with imperialism, but in a lot of ways, they thought they were coming to help these people, help them be a modern people. It's kind of like, well, they don't have a lot. We're going to help them develop an economy and develop society. Of course, we look back at it now and we see it as the destruction of society, not the enhancement of society. Okay. All right. So a couple things here. We start off talking about Canada. A few things, just real general stuff. We remember Canada was originally founded by the French, and the French, when they colonized, they married. Who did they marry? The French guys that came over. Right. They married the Native Americans. So there was a unique kind of society there, and then the English came over. Remember, English brought their families, so in Canada there was always this kind of struggle or a little bit between the French-speaking people and the English-speaking people, and actually it still kind of goes on a little bit today. Every few years, the French province in Canada tries to, they'll have a vote to see if they want to form their own like independent country, so to speak, or their own independent dominion. All right, anyway, so eventually over the years, Canada became Canada. And remember, there was a long process in Great Britain of democracy and voting rights and stuff, and Canada being a part of that British Empire kind of went along with that too, and eventually kind of got their own country, so to speak. Now, there's a thing in here on Cajuns. The Cajun is a term that comes from the people who left Acadia. Let's see how your book says it. Acadia, or the Acadians. Okay, now Acadia was that area Nova Scotia up there in Canada. They left. What year was it? I think it's in your book. What year did the Cajuns leave? These are French-speaking Catholic people from 1713. Now, this group actually had families. These were family settlers. And so the thing that made the Cajuns different was that they brought their families with them. Now, when the British kind of took over, they started to make it difficult for the French people, so the bunch of groups of French left. They stopped off in North Carolina, and they came around Florida, and some of them kind of bounced around Mobile, but they ended up in South Louisiana. Just so you know, the Cajuns are different from the people that live in New Orleans. Okay, the people there's two French influences in Louisiana. One is the original French colony of New Orleans, and those are the people that live in and around New Orleans. And then there's Cajuns who were these Acadians that came from Canada. Okay. Next in here, you read about Australia, and you read about New Zealand. Okay. And just a couple quick points. What is a penal colony? Right. So it's where the convicts went. So where the prison, took prisoners there. So this was something that some countries did when they had their prisons were overflowing. Right. So they sent them to Australia, and then after they got done with their prison term, most of them, I guess, stayed there. From what I've read, they've stayed there and they got land and all that. What state in our country originally was going to be started as a convict colony, but it didn't really last very long as a convict colony? Huh? It was not Texas. The most southern of the 13 colonies that became part of the United States. Well, here's a map right here. Florida was not one of the original 13 colonies, although there were 2 Florida colonies at the time of our founding. Georgia, Chase, very good. Now, when you go to Coach Bishop's class next year, make sure you know that, okay? All right, let's see what else. All right. Canada, penal colony. New Zealand, New Zealand is right next to Australia, and there was some problems there with the native peoples that live there. So one of the things, regardless of where you study, one of the themes with colonization and imperialism is a conflict between the people who actually live there and the British who are going there to get stuff. All right. Okay, that's it. All right, Ireland. What do people eat in Ireland? Potatoes. That's just one of those things, and we've talked about potatoes before. Potatoes, where are potatoes originally from?
New World.
New World product. Thank you very much. Remember, potatoes have a whole lot of nutrition, and they have a whole lot of calories, so that's really good when you're trying to grow the population. And Ireland's population grew very quickly. Potatoes also grow where there's poor soil, and so it worked out really well. I guess there's a lot of bad soil in Ireland. Now, the only problem with having basically one crop is that when there is a disease or blight or some kind of problem, it destroys a lot of the crop and people die. And that's what happened in Ireland. This is kind of a famous part, the Great Famine in Ireland, famous part of Irish history and American history. Why is this also part of American history? Anybody have any guesses? Elise? Yeah, sure. A bunch of Irish came to America. So I think your book has some statistics in here about how many Irish people and so forth came to America with the Great Famine. In your book, it says 70% remained in Ireland, 12% died, 18% left Ireland. The fancy word for leaving is to emigrate with an E. Where did they go? Half of them went to the United States. So this was a big push of people from Ireland come to our country. And our country has a rich history of having lots of Irish immigrants. Thank you. There's a holiday coming up next week that Irish people love to celebrate. Yeah, St. Patrick's Day. So we all know about St. Patrick's Day. From what I've been told, St. Patrick's Day is a much bigger holiday in America than it is in Ireland. But that's the way we do things in America. We take something small and make it really big, like Cinco de Mayo is a huge party in America. In Mexico, I think it's just kind of one of those days. But, this is what we do. We turn things into big parties. All right, so the potato famine caused people to leave Ireland and caused people to die in Ireland. Okay. Now, again, the Irish in Ireland, that was another place where the British basically treated Ireland sort of like a colony because they wanted to go there and get raw materials and all that. The British also were they really kind of were the owners of the land. And this is where the British ran into problems with the Irish, because the British went there, and for the most part, the British, they were like, hey, we own this land. Y'all might live here, but we own it. We took it, however. And the British had problem with this with people over the years. Do y'all remember the movie Braveheart? Okay, y'all remember Braveheart? Now, of course, we know the scene where they go running and killing each other and all that, and we know all the killing scenes. But what was, anybody remember one of the original conflicts that was the beginning of that movie? Not the part where the mean guy takes the guy's wife or future wife or whatever, but what was the real problem? What was the real conflict? You had English nobility going into Scotland and then telling the Scotland people how to live, right? Y'all remember that ratty old fort they had? It was made out of wood, and there was like a dozen knights in armor there and telling the Scottish people what to do. Y'all need to watch more TV. Y'all need to go back and watch Braveheart. That's what happened in Braveheart. The beginning of it, huh? We should watch it in here. Yeah, we should watch it right now. Pull it up right now, because everything's immediate in our society. So, but no, the beginning of Braveheart was, before all the killing stuff, there was an English guy, and he went to Ireland, and he said, I own this land. Y'all are working for me. And the Scottish people didn't like that very much. But this is kind of what the English did in a lot of places. This conflict between landowner and people, or nobility and people, spilled over into a lot of places, including our own country. All right. Ireland eventually became its own country, 1921. And this is like right at the end of World War I, right after World War I. And at that point, Ireland split into part that we call Northern Ireland, and that's part of Great Britain now, and then the Irish got their own country. Now, there are lots and lots of problems in Ireland. Even in, like, when I was your age, they had basically a civil war still going on in Ireland between the Irish Republican Army and the British. And y'all, about terrorism and stuff that we have today? Well, the Irish Republican Army, which was a terrorist organization, they would bomb British police offices and British government buildings and things like that. And it was a big problem for many years. Now we haven't heard much about it here lately, so I guess they're living just fine over there. Okay. All right, any questions? All right, so here's what I want you to do now. Well, we've got just a few minutes left in class, but I want you to get your phones out and go to my web page and look under Links, Reviews, and Remediation. Go to my school web page, go to Links, Reviews, Remediation, and look under, it'll say Chapter 10, what's it called, Preview Test or something? Okay, and go ahead and start taking that test. This is a great preview quiz for you, and if you don't have a device, share with somebody till the end of class.